All right. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Court Live. Sorry for the long break, but there were things going on in all our lives that we weren't able to make it. But we are back for episode 8. This episode, we're going to be discussing Batman Hush, one of the crown jewels of the Batman mythology and legacy. This is definitely one of those touchstone stories, much like The Dark Knight, that is unrivaled by many other stories and incidences involving Batman. As always, I am joined by New York Alex.
How you doing?
I am joined by Cali Alex.
Woo woo! What's up? What's up?
And as well as Ashley. So, how are you guys all doing?
Good.
Good.
Glad to be back.
Most definitely. It's a funny thing how life can kind of blindside you and catch you off guard, and then you get wrapped up in being busy.
Yes.
What have you guys been up to? Well, first and foremost, you guys have been doing well, right? With all this craziness and vaccinations and stuff like that, you guys have been safe and been good.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Living on the edge as always. I think Paul or Tom Petty said, "I'm a rebel without a clue."
Okay. Okay. Yeah. We're going to be quoting song lyrics. We may have to change this to something else. Okay. All right. So have you guys gotten, outside of Hush, because I know Hush is actually a big story and it's a lot to take in and a lot to go through. Have you guys been getting anything new, any new books, anything new that you guys have been dealing with?
I got some new cosplay stuff that's in the works right now. So I just finished making my own emblem on my next bat suit. It took me 4 tries to learn how to cast a urethane emblem. And now I got custom parts. Speaking of Hush, for my blue and gray bat suit, other than the black and gray bat boy over there. So those are in the works right now.
Okay. Okay. And you, Callie Alex, any new books or anything coming up?
Digitally reading a lot of the DC He-Man Masters of the Universe stuff. So I finally got through all that in the past week, and then I had to buy the omnibus, and so yeah. It started off bad, but then it got good, and then I was like, yeah, I can jab with this.
Man. Oh man, that's crazy.
My fiance is trying to assassinate me, guys.
What's that?
If you see, my fiance is trying to assassinate me.
From the shadows.
Yeah, she's sending in a stealth assassin.
That's awesome.
The kitty cat.
Yeah,
kitty cat. Yeah. Look at that. And what about you, Ashley? Anything new that you've been reading or anything that you've come across?
I started reading the Nailbiter series that you recommended.
Woo!
I know. And then let's see. I reread Hush, and there was another comic book. I finally finished Joker Wars. I wasn't impressed with it. It took a long time to get through it.
Yeah.
I just wasn't. I don't know. I just wish it was better than what I saw on the cover. But it wasn't. It was what it was.
It was, yeah. That's why I hope in the future we can do Jokes and Riddles, the War of Jokes and Riddles, because that was way better. It just, it really was. Joker War just
I'm actually the opposite opinion. I guess I'm the odd man out here. I love Joker War. Joker War is great for me.
Joker War just dragged on for me.
Did.
It just dragged on, and it was the part where he's in the park with Harley. That to me was.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it was mind numbing. It really was.
7 times,
yeah.
Rick. 7 times. I left. I came back. I tried to read it. I left. I came back. Tried to read it.
Yeah.
The last time I tried to do that was when I was trying to watch the Blair Witch Project, and I was 12. So
little tangent. The reason I love the Joker War, not because of the Joker, it's not even because of Punchline, because it's the same thing the Joker does a million times over. The city's in danger, blah, 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 whatever. It's because it's the first time that we've had the entire family come together in Gotham in like 2 friggin' years for an event. So like it was great because you had Dan DiDio and even Scott Snyder being an amazing writer. He still didn't really like writing most of the Bat family, so he kind of kept them apart.
Oh, you could tell.
So,
yeah.
You could tell he didn't like it, and I think that's what also was kind of like about it was that Zack Snyder. I've read a lot of his stuff, but it seemed like it just was.
Snyder.
What did I say?
You said Zach.
Scott Snyder. Sorry, I'm tired. But a lot, and I've read a lot of his stuff, but it just seemed like this was not the same. Like he kind of was like fading from it. Like he didn't want to, and he was pushed to do it.
This was James Tynion, and James Tynion said right before he took over Batman that he wanted to bring the family back together. So, like, having Nightwing come back and Jason come back and all that kind of stuff was great to freaking see. And, of course, you had Jorge Menez's beautiful artwork. And I'm sorry, but one of the best conversations between Batman and Alfred that I've ever seen in any comic book, period.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, look, there are great aspects to the Joker War. Don't get me wrong, but overall, collectively, it's not that strong of a story. It really is.
The of it is a weak part because the Joker doing what he always freaking does. Hey, I'm taking over the city in some weird way. Oh, I have Bruce Wayne some money now. Big freaking whoop. This isn't the first time he's lost his money before, so I'm not worried about him not being able to do shit before because he's lost his entire fortune before. So we know he's gonna get it out of there. Punchline is a college freaking fangirl that no one really likes. No offense to Punchline people out there.
I never even heard of her until this story, and I was like, okay, can you like go away? Like halfway through it, I was like, can you just go away because you bug me?
Well, this was her first appearance, so she was never mentioned. She just came out
in college. That know-it-all, like freaking anti-establishment person in college is like, oh, you do X, Y, Z. How bourgeois of you, and like everyone knew that person in fucking college. Okay. He's like, oh, wait, you still go to Dunkin' Donuts? No, I get my beans imported from Colombia. They're da-da-da-da-da. It's like, okay, shut the hell up. No one cares.
Your cat is behind your statues there.
Mm-hmm.
Where?
Yeah, he's over there. He was.
I've actually trained him to be not destructive when it comes to my statues.
Okay.
So... yeah,
until tonight, people. Until tonight.
That's right. It'll be video recorded out in the ether. So
we've had several restaurants. He's the only cat allowed in here because he's the only one that won't go ape shit around my stuff. And he's obsessed with my mannequin.
That's fine.
Well, I'm glad that you guys are doing great. I know that the time off was in some ways needed for us to focus on some things going on, but now we're back on track. We're back in the groove, and tonight's episode is about Batman Hush. So, Batman Hush is written by Jeff Loeb with art and ink from Jim Lee and Scott Williams, and it is definitely if any of you out there are unfamiliar with this, you need to get this, period. The two books you really should have in your collection, even if you don't collect comic books, is Batman Hush and The Dark Knight Returns. This book is definitely, artwork-wise, Jim Lee at his finest. I don't believe that Jim has done any better work than he's ever done in Batman Hush for DC. His X-Men run, bar none, just as good, just as strong. But his artwork in Batman Hush is phenomenal. Jeff Loeb is in his stride on this. Personally speaking, considering some of the drama around Jeff compared to Jeff Johns, I would support Loeb over Johns any day. And The interactions, the script is fantastic, but we'll get into that. Ashley, what were your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the marketing behind Hush was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Hush really made DC stand out. I mean, they sold watches. I'm wearing one right now. Okay, they sold T-shirts of Hush. I'm wearing it. They sold posters. They sold memorabilia. They sold action figures. They sold statues. They sold, yep. I mean, T-shirts, and just the amount of the artwork in this. Like everywhere I turn, I see Hush, and it's really incredible. And I think this really was a great plan and marketing idea for DC. I liked the story to a point. I have some issues with who the villain is. But I mean, overall, it wasn't bad. It was well developed, and I like how it came together. You know, it was a very original idea. You know, I'm not a fan of the Ivy Catwoman scene in there because I don't see how that really plays a part. They kind of just seem to throw it in there every now and then, which kind of was like, eh. And it just seemed out of place to me. It seemed like it was really out of place. They just wanted to like put it together and show something.
Mm-hmm.
But and
standard comic book fanboy fan service.
It's still yeah, I know, but at the same time, it's like, could you like maybe not make a scene like this like every time we have a movie or every time we have a book? Like, can we just like leave it and not have this? Because it gets old to me anyway. If you, I mean, we're probably not going to compare it to the movie, but I read the book, I watched the movie, and I didn't really care for the movie. I mean, it's always the book is better than the movie, and there's compare and contrast versions of that. I mean, overall, it follows the story, but they didn't put Croc in there. They didn't put Huntress in there. You know, it was very different. I think the style of Hush himself was a little different. So I mean, it was good. I mean, it wasn't bad. I mean, I like Hush, and I love the marketing plan that they really pushed for this. You know, and I love Jim Lee stuff. I've always loved Jim Lee stuff. You know, if I could marry Jim Lee, I would. So.
Well, he's on his second marriage, so you just need for that to end.
Yeah, that and Ben Affleck as Batman, and then Danny Elfman. I will have Danny Elfman's babies. So other than that, I'm good. And I think all together those guys could pull off Hush and be good. So.
Okay. Okay. All right. New York Alex, what were your thoughts?
Now, like, this is one of my favorite stories. I remember it particularly because, speaking of the marketing that Ashley was speaking about, this is one of the few comic books I saw that was actually put in the newspaper in New York. Oh. It was actually in the Sunday Times. The first issue was in the freaking Times. And my dad got the paper. It's like, hey, there's something in the newspaper I think you might like. And then, like, I'm just chilling in my room. And he goes, there you go. I'm like, what the heck is this? There was a freaking comic book in a newspaper. And I'm like, it was the first Batman comic I had read in a long time because I was going through, I think, my first year of high school. So my interests had varied to other more teenage things. But like, hey, here's a comic book for it. I'm like, this is really awesome. This is not the same kind of cartoony early to mid 90s Batman that I grew up with. This is way different. So like it got me to like really kind of get back in like comic books a little bit more, and reintroduced me to Jim Lee and all that kind of stuff, and this more aggressive Batman, and I really like that. Of course, you know, it's Jeff Loeb, and Jeff Loeb can't do a small story. Just like, you know, Long Halloween and like that, he has to get everyone involved at some point. And just like Ashley said, there's a lot of cameos in this that really don't seem necessary. they're just there to be there, and they kind of don't really go anywhere. So it's that, and just like there's a few issues with getting characters involved that probably wouldn't be involved with the overarching story. I love the idea of Hush as a villain. He's one of my favorite villains on the Batman and Rogues Gallery. I love when they get personal with Batman and Bruce. And just the artwork in this is impeccable. Like, the only problem I have with Jim Lee's artwork ever is that the fact that he is not the most expressive artist when it comes to emotion. Like, pretty much, if you look at this comic book, Batman has like one emotion. It's well, two. Angry and angrier. That's really it. So even as Bruce Wayne, you don't really get a good range of emotion out of him. And Jim, I love you to death, but as an artist, you do suffer from same face syndrome. Lois looks exactly like Salina. Clark looks exactly like Bruce. They have the same fucking freaking jawline. His artwork is impeccable on a technical level, but you take the hairstyles away and the clothes, and they're freaking clones. That's from one artist to another. But it's like, once you get past that, it's a great story, and I love seeing all this. I think the only other story that I can see that is probably has more characters than this is another Jeff Loeb story, which is Battle for the Cowl, which I hope we cover eventually. But I love this. This is actually what I based that bat suit on, was Hush. I love the shorter ears. I love the emblem. I love the big utility belt. I love everything about that suit except for the blue. So I just went black on mine. But like, that's my epitome of a timeless modern bat is Jim Lee's version of Batman.
Yeah, I would agree with you on
genius. Jim Lee is a genius in this. I mean, he's a genius anyway. But I mean, this really stands out. I think is one of his best works that he's done in years. I mean, this isn't. I mean, it's. I considered it an old book. I mean, when did this come out? 2002.
2003.
Yeah, 2002.
19 years ago.
So, I mean, it's still a classic to this day. I mean, it's pretty iconic. There's certain pieces in this comic book where you see, you know, a panel from it and you're like, that's Hush. And that's what I think that's what they were going for. Whereas if you pick up a comic book now of like the Batman and Catwoman, where you look at it and you're like, I don't know where that's from. You know, it's like, but this is like automatic, you know, it's just like the Killing Joke. The Killing Joke and Hush, I think really marketing wise and just everything, artwork. And I know like for two different artists that are completely different styles, everything else, even, you know, generations, it's really incredible to see how you can identify which one is which and what really stands out. It's really cool. And I liked how the story really did come together. You know, it was an original idea. Now you don't really see that very often, but I think for its time it was great.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think you said it too, Ashley, was you know, you like to see the Batman villains when they're personal, you know. You know, you know, you look at the Joker, you look at the Riddler, you look at Penguin, you look at Croc, you look at you know, Mr. Freeze. Like, a large majority of Batman's Rogues Gallery are representations of aspects of Batman, but they're not like Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery is every villain that he has is connected to him in some personal, emotional way, versus Batman is more a representation of like his psyche. And you know, Hush is literally the like closest personal villain in Batman's Rogues Gallery compared to any other. Now, you know, some may argue, okay, well, you know, you've got Catwoman. All right, well, Catwoman is more romantically connected and not so much personal. Like she doesn't have that personal history from Bruce's childhood. So that is that's a very different emotional path than with Hush. Alex, what were your thoughts on what we've read so far with Batman Hush?
This is like the first time I've read this since it came out. So back in the day, this came out while I was in college. Mm-hmm. So I was reading like stuff like, what was I reading? Why the Last Man and Authority and Transmetropolitan. Wow. And I was getting this as singles. So that's when I was still reading floppies. So I was kind of like, I was hyped for it. And I loved Jim Lee's stuff. I loved his Wildcats. I loved his X-Men. And I was like, this is going to be awesome. I love Batman. Yeah. And so when I was reading in singles between the hype and the story, I was like, this is not as good as I want it to be. And the whole, we were talking like forums and like in comic shops about we're bringing, Jason Todd back in this somehow. So I was like hyped for that. And yeah, that was kind of a whimper. I mean, they fixed it later on and they kind of like waved their hands and did some magic, but But this time I read it, I have more like comic knowledge under my belt. Back then I was like more of like, the 60s show, the Tim Burton movies,
right.
cartoons, and like a few comics here and there like Nightfall, Breaking the Bat and all that. So like I missed a lot of the little Easter eggs here and there. Right. So this time I was like, wow, this is really in depth and wow, pulling from this and that. And I like Huntress back in the day because of Rob and Tim Drake. And so, I appreciated that even more, even still. And it was very, very cool. I'm sorry, Alex. I'm sorry. No. I cut you off. Go, please continue. Real quick. At the beginning, Croc kidnapped this kid or whatever, and Batman has to save him. I was like, wait, this is Virtuosity. This is the end of Virtuosity because my wife and I watched that recently. And I was like, which one came first? I wonder. But crazy aside.
Yeah. Wow. So I know we kind of jumped into it, but I just wanted to give our audience just a brief synopsis. So Batman Hush, Batman is in pursuit. It starts off with him in pursuit of a kidnapped child of a wealthy family, and as the story progresses, he does rescue the kid relatively quickly, but he comes to find out that there is a mastermind involved who's brought in some of his villains who have been running interference involved in this kidnapping. And with that, it was revealed over time that there's a personal connection that Bruce has with someone from his past, from his childhood, that has kind of grown up almost in a twisted version of Bruce Wayne. So literally it's a mirror image of Bruce Wayne wanting to be the real Bruce Wayne. So for those of you that have seen it or are familiar with it, it's almost like, Jordan Peele's Us. But Bruce is not taken over, nor is he, put in a situation where he's put in, underground or anything like that. But it is literally a mirror image in a person who wants to take over and become Bruce. So, as the story unfolds, Bruce and Batman together are exploring a series of detective cases that are all connected. Both Batman has his and Bruce has his, but they're very parallel. The funny thing is, it's the two personas that are pursuing the same path. With that being said, this is a book worth getting for sure. You got to get this. If you're a completionist and you want the individual issues, they're out there. Some are more expensive than others. But if you can get the collected one, which this is one of many versions that are out there, highly recommend getting Batman Hush. The writing is hands down A grade at the top. I mean, very, very peak. There is something that did stand out for me in it, and I'm glad that Ashley mentioned it, is there's a part in there where and it's early on in the story where Batman's talking to Catwoman. And Ashley, I wanted to get your opinion on this.
Oh boy, here we go.
Salina says that, well, first of all, she says that she's been taken advantage of by Poison Ivy, right? And she's like, I don't, no man or no person will ever take advantage of me. I will never allow myself to be in that position, blah, 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 blah. Then a few pages later, when Bruce goes to Metropolis, right? And well, let me back up. Salina goes to Ivy, and they kind of have a bit of a fight and whatnot. But then they go to Metropolis, and their very first introduction of Lois Lane is she's trying to spell therapist. And she makes an interesting connotation between if you split therapist apart, if you split the word apart. I found it interesting how both of those both those instances were women kind of acknowledging aspects of losing power. Like you have Salina being told and recognizing that she was being taken advantage of and used against her will. And then you have Lois Lane talking about she's doing this rapist or therapist rapist article. And I just find that interesting that was something that was like of all the topics that Jeff could have written about, he had to go with it, and to me, it struck out. It kind of struck a nerve because usually Lois, that's heavy. That's a heavy topic. Let me put it that way. That's kind of a heavy topic to have in there. So I wanted to see what your thoughts of that, if you saw the same thing.
There is a part of it where you could tell, like in the panel itself, there were parts where there was obviously characters taking advantage of each other. I mean, how many times did we see Catwoman take advantage of Batman? Okay.
Yep.
And I mean, it's even in movies. We watched Catwoman lick Batman. Okay. In this one, we see Poison Ivy pretty much make Catwoman crawl and be vulnerable, and then create a lesbian scene. I don't know how other way to put it. I'm sorry, but that's pretty much it. And it is to me, it's uncomfortable to watch because I don't know what provokes a writer to go that far. If they think it's like going to, cause controversy, or if, it's just like something to get the fanboys excited, or like in Alex, I think you mentioned that. But I don't really know. I mean, it got sidetracked.
Yeah.
Did we really need to get sidetracked on this? Yeah. Not really. Did it come together in a very bizarre way? Yeah. Should it have? I don't think so, because it kind of just took away from the story. What does that have to do with the original villain, who ends up being a C budget character? I mean, who, like, if you've read Hush, you know exactly who the villain is. So what does that have to do with anything, except for the fact that, Hush basically brings out the worst in people and then uses it to their advantage.
Yeah.
But at what point does he make them do this? And there was a part of there where, Catwoman's like, oh, well, or no, Poison Ivy was like, oh, no, well, Hush made me do this. And I kind of call BS on that, because she's just as guilty as the rest of them. Yep. Okay, you're telling me that he made you do this? You're a supervillain, and now you feel like you're threatened and you have to do this? And now that caused an uncomfortable scene for a couple of readers? Give me a break. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what provoked it. I didn't really care for it. I kind of rolled my eyes to it. I don't know. Maybe it was part of the Me Too movement. I don't know. But I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, and then I'm gonna come to you, Callie, Alex, on this, being a writer. For me, I definitely, and piggybacking on a little bit of what Ashley said there, for me, I like the part where Salina, she recognizes that she was taken advantage of by Ivy. I like that part. I really do. And you can see her sensibility in her independence, in like, no one takes advantage of me, blah, blah, blah. Then she goes to Ivy, and the two of them have, start to have a bit of a fight. And then, like Ashley said, Ivy says, well, Hush made me do this. I'm okay with that. And, obviously we have more to talk about possibly in the next episode because, guys, there will be a part 2 to Hush. The story is just too big to knock out in one episode. But, to delve more into Hush as a major manipulator, which would be his superpower, I think it was unnecessary for Jeff to be introducing Lois talking about, this rapist or this therapist rapist. Me as a fan, and you said, you're rereading it too. Do you think that if Jeff had written more of a connection with the Lois intro as an investigatory aspect into LexCorp or into that chemical company that the kid was kidnapped from, could have been a better side story for Bruce's place there in Metropolis?
It could have been, but yeah, at the time he probably wasn't on his brain. It might have been a scheduling. It could have been a lot of factors. So yeah, in hindsight, yes, that would have been a much better thing. But in the moment, that's an old joke with the therapist, the rapist.
Yeah.
I kind of took it as that for a little bit. The parallels between, Salina and her agency hating Ivy for taking control. I mean, that could be a parallel. That could have been something that was on his mind. But yeah, it was a fun thing. Lois needed a story to work on. It was a fun aside to get Bruce into the building. So I kind of just took it as that, and that kind of went on.
Oh, and I did too. Don't get me wrong. I did too. It was just that that those two instances are very close together. They're very close. And I think that
a callback from Margot Kidder slows Lane than anything, because I thought it was more of an inside joke that Margot Kidder, whenever she was on screen in the Superman movies, was always asking how to spell a word and making some sort of offhanded comment about whatever word she was trying to spell. And as far as the whole Catwoman Lois Lane thing, this is the early 2000s, so I have the theory that usually decades last about 5 years after the decade is already over. So early 2000s I still consider part of the 90s. So we do get a lot of fan service as far as things are concerned. So when it comes to, especially in this comic book and a lot of early 2000s comics, unfortunately, women are just used as vehicles to move the plot forward for the male characters, which is exactly what happens to Lois Lane a few panels later.
Yeah,
and it's the same with Catwoman and Poison Ivy, because a good writer, what they do with Poison Ivy is they prove that Poison Ivy can't be bought or manipulated, because her crusade for the environment is more important than whatever anyone can offer her in order to do what they want her to do.
Yep.
And this is where it's that kind of that weird thing where Jeff Lowe kind of forced a few villains that usually can't be bought and bargained with into the story just for the sake of having them in the story.
Yeah.
Because Poison Ivy is one of those characters. She's not interested in money. Why would she even want money in the first place?
Yeah.
And it's been established before the story that Poison Ivy and Salina are friends. So there's no way that she would use her powers against a friend that she considered at this point in time in comic books, because they've established a relationship they've had of both of them being in that anti-villain type of way in the early 2000s. But, it was just for the sake of, okay, this is going to be the biggest story that DC is going to have this year, so we got to get as many villains in the story as possible. And, of course, you have Salina in her skin-tight Catwoman outfit. You got Poison Ivy and her Poison Ivy leotard and all that kind of stuff. And pretty much Poison Ivy has no other function in the story other than to manipulate other characters to do her bidding, which why?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, my question.
Right. So we have to get Poison Ivy to find somehow she gets a hold of kryptonite, uses it in her manipulation power to somehow get Superman under her control. And then what happens with Lois Lane?
They don't really
thrown off a building, and Superman has to save her. So
Did you
it
guys?
was a vehicle to show the influence of Hush in a weird way, but if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, these characters shouldn't have been able to be brought and manipulated the way they did.
Yeah.
Did you guys notice that when Poison Ivy and Superman come together, it's kind of just thrown in there?
Yep.
Just
it's left field.
it's just like,
totally left
because
field.
I had to go back a couple times, and even into the movie, I'm like, okay,
Where did this
so
come from?
where the heck
Yeah.
did this come from?
Yep.
It seemed like there were parts of this, and I'm saying it's an original idea. Granted, they wanted everybody to come together, as DC does, but what also kind of bugged me was that there was no reason for Superman. Like, there's no backstory. Like, how the heck did we go from one side of, okay, what Catwoman and Ivy fighting with Batman, to all of a sudden now Superman's involved? Like, what?
Yeah.
Wait, what? How the heck did that just happen? And I'm like, okay, so now it's not a normal thing where you kind of know, because of Poison Ivy. If you know anything about Poison Ivy, you know what she's going to do. She's got that whole, sexual thing going on where she can manipulate and hypnotize and everything else. But to the point where I kind of raise an eyebrow between those two, because it just doesn't seem to fit. And it seemed to me, and I wanted to get everybody's opinion on this, it seemed like they forced the two characters to collide.
Yes.
And it felt so overdone. I still have a hard time getting through it, where I'm just like, okay, there's just no way in hell. Okay, I'm sorry. This is really dumb. This is no. Let's get over this. No.
Well, I think for me in reading it, what I interpreted, and it's unfortunate, it really is unfortunate that Superman's involvement takes place outside of the pages, to where he's influenced by Poison Ivy, and I would have preferred, like when Bruce is at the Daily Planet, and when he leaves, and then you see Clark changing into Superman, that he flies over the city, at least if it was one panel or two panels, and he flies over the city and he uses his X-ray vision and finds her, that could put it into context. And then he shows up to fight Batman, and then you're like, right, okay, got it. Yep, I saw that panel.
But there was none of that.
No, there's not even any exposition.
No, there isn't.
No exposition. It just shows up.
It drives me crazy. It drove me crazy.
Yep.
And I'm like, and it had been a while since I read this, like with Callie Alex, I had to go back too. And I'm like, okay, what the heck? Like, if this was a movie, I think viewers would be going, where did that come from?
Yep.
Well, it's pretty much the same thing.
Yep.
And, and I'm just like, okay, did M. Night Shyamalan write this? What the heck happened? Yeah. What happened? I like your development idea, Rick. I think it's fantastic. I think that would have been a great context for it. Yeah. That would have, even one panel, you're right, it would have been perfect for a setup.
Yep.
This is just like, yeah, we're just going to throw Superman in there. What the heck? And also Crypto.
And totally left field. I mean, Crypto's fine. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's definitely, like I think Alex said. There's a lot of fan service parts. There's a lot of parts that are fan service spread throughout the story. And you right from the very beginning. Like, initially, don't get me wrong. Like, one of the reasons why I like the Batman Hush story is how it starts. It starts in the middle of action. I love movies. I absolutely love movies that start in the middle of action. Lethal Weapon 2 is a great example. It is like right in the middle of the car chase. All hell's breaking loose, and you're just trying to get your bearings. And I love that because, you have that anticipation of like, whoa, like, it's almost like it's almost like starting a roller coaster at the top of the hill versus down at the bottom and going up. You're like, okay, like there's no time to prepare. And I like that. I really do. And that's what I liked about how this started. But with the fan service that Alex had mentioned, there's a lot of shoehorning. You know, they shoehorn in Croc, and then you see Catwoman in the background. Catwoman steals the money from Croc and goes to Ivy, and like really, like you literally need 3 villains. You know, and what was Waller there for? Waller had no reason to be there unless there was more of an involvement from her, and she didn't have much. And then comes Metropolis. He comes to Metropolis. They shoehorn Lois. They shoehorn Clark. They shoehorn Superman. And it's like, dude, you really, like, you could have done it better without shoehorning them. You know, I understand Bruce goes to the Daily Planet because he says he owns it, but really all he does is go to the Daily Planet to use Lois's computer, and then he's like, peace, see ya! You know, and it's like, that's all you went there for, just to talk to Oracle? You could
wasn't he wasting time because he was meeting Salina because she was looking for Ivy?
Right? No. For Metropolis, yes. Daily Planet, no. Is what I'm saying. Like,
he also meets up with Talia too.
He does.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Yeah, he does. But if he was going to Metropolis, and he even said it, like Batman even says it. He's like, you know, I know that if Superman came to Gotham, he would give me the heads up, but I'm not him, and I'm, you know, just my mere presence is a heads up enough, you know, and that's fine. But like, if he's gonna fly to Metropolis from Gotham City, and they're partners, they're friends, because that's another thing too that was a little bit off-putting, is the whole time Bruce and Clark are having this monologue in their minds that they're friends. Even Lois reminds Clark, hey, remember, you guys are friends. It's like, well, you had enough time, Bruce, to give Clark a heads up that you were coming to Metropolis. You don't need to go to the Daily Planet. You don't need to get into Lois's computer. So there's a bit of shoehorning with certain characters in this. Yeah. And that's unfortunate because it could make the story so much better.
Overall, the reason I think it is because I think they were going for more of a Nightfall feel, where Hush himself was trying to run Batman ragged. And, like, you know, because when you finally realize who Hush actually is, but the initial idea of who Hush is, of course, is a friend of Bruce Wayne and da-da-da-da-da. And the reason why he gets everyone involved is because he wants revenge over something that, you know, Bruce's father did. And he wants to basically run it back to the point where, because, you know, spoils for a almost 20-year-old story, but the initial idea of Hush is that it's Tommy Elliott, Bruce's best friend. And he's doing all this to run him ragged. This way he can eventually, of course, you know, confront Bruce and say, hey, your dad was supposed to let both my parents die so I can inherit my family's fortune, but then you ended up getting your family's fortune instead. So, you know, da-da-da-da-da. I mean, it's not completely unoriginal to have a gauntlet for Batman to run, especially with a villain that knows you can't face him one-on-one, like Hush, and try to do it in a more intellectual way. But it's one of those cases where you watch an action movie and the villain's plot is so convoluted, you wonder why he couldn't have found a more efficient way of doing it. I needed you to go to this person, that person to go to this person to go back to that person, you to go over here.
Did you guys feel like, my brain is kind of fogging, so I apologize if I can't get this out right away.
No problem.
Did you feel like the character development of who Hush was, after you get through all of these Poison Ivy, you know, Harley, Huntress, Superman, you know, all these other characters and villains and everything else, do you really feel like there was enough character development and plot to really show who Hush was, and was it good? Do you think it was that development was good? If you take all the villains away, okay, take all the villains away, okay, aside from the main villain that they're focusing on, which is Hush, okay, the C budget guy that we're talking about, that we end up figuring out who it really is. is it really good character development? That's my question. Like, I want feedback on that, because I didn't feel like it was. It really seemed to be like, it was just like, eh.
I would say no. I would say no. There wasn't, because now, first of all, I understand the distance that Hush was trying to create. I understand, like, okay, maybe a distance between me and Killer Croc. So it would be him, Poison Ivy, Killer Croc, and Catwoman just happened to be taking advantage of the moment because she happened to be nearby. But that wasn't very well explained, because Poison Ivy was expecting the money. So now you have 3 villains distanced from Hush to Batman, whereas he could have just done 1 or 2. I think that the driving motivation of Hush, of Tommy, definitely the anger was there for sure, but I think that he could have gone about it using different villains.
Yeah.
I think he could have gone about using Penguin. He could have gone about it using Riddler a little bit. He could have gone about it, and that's not to say that they're not used later in the story, because they are.
Yes, they are.
But
you're right.
But I'm just saying, like, in terms of the story, I think what Batman Hush, what they tried to do was create a story much like The Long Halloween, and that was to have a bulk of the Rogues Gallery involved in the story, in whatever aspects that they could situate those villains in, and introduce a new villain that is up to that level of being within Rogues Gallery. Like you were saying, Ashley, you have this type A, type B story villain, but in the end, it's more like a C-level villain who doesn't compare to these other, tier A.
Like
villains.
Joker,
or Riddler, or
Well, I mean, it kind of. Go ahead. Go ahead, Alex. I apologize.
No, I feel it works because Batman works best in a whodunit scenario. And that's what Jeff is the best. Because when he did Long Halloween, you're expecting an A-class villain, you're expecting Joker, you're expecting all these guys, to realize that it's really someone that no one, not even within the story, would have ever suspected. It was a nobody. Yeah. And it's the same thing here. Batman is being run through this gauntlet because at the end of the day, the core of Batman Hush is a story of manipulation.
Yep.
It is
getting Batman to run him ragged, to not trust anyone and anything that he sees, because he feels like, okay, this person knows me inside and out, is manipulating every situation, both in the cowl and out of the cowl. So I can't trust anyone, because you see him turn against Nightwing, you see him turn against Salina, you see him even question Tim and all this kind of stuff, because it's like, okay, no one knows this much about me. Who the hell is it? So that's where I feel the story works the best. If you get out of the mindset of, okay, this would work better if like it was a known villain and work in the first, like, okay, no, because that's how Batman thinks. Like Batman thinks this entire situation would be something that one of his A or F class villains would be responsible for. Someone like Ra's al Ghul, who has the money and the influence to do this kind of thing, but it turns out to be someone who's not even on his radar. And that turns to be some of the best stories, because he did the same thing in Batman Eternal. Batman Eternal was another great story where Batman's like, oh no, it has to be this villain, this person who's so high up on my shit list that I have to make sure it's him. And it turns out to be someone completely he didn't even register at all. And as the reader in this story, when you're reading it for the first time, as each villain comes into the story and leaves the story, now you get to check off that villain with Batman. It's like, okay, it can't be that person because ABC. It can't be that person because XYZ. Who the hell is it then?
Yep.
I mean, it does end up in kind of a Shyamalan-esque twist, which is kind of, I mean, take it or leave it
shocking
as well. But it's what I love those stories when you kind of keep pace with Batman as he kind of works through the investigation process. Okay, this turned out to be what I thought was a petty crime, but now it's going a lot deeper. Who can cut my back cable? Who can manipulate Superman? Who can do X, Y, Z? And it's like, all right, cool. Now we're getting somewhere. Who does have that kind of influence? And you see him go through the process, and that's where I really like, because it's so easy to write a Batman story where it's like, Batman, I've done X, Y, Z, and you knew it was me the entire time, and that's more of a Superman thing.
Yeah.
Like Superman gets into with things like, oh, let me guess, it's Lex Luthor. Yeah, it's Lex Luthor. There's no guessing with Superman. Yeah. To have a story with Batman, we're like, okay, now we got to figure out who this is along with Batman. And it kind of draws you in. And it makes you forget, because I still enjoy reading this story. It makes you forget about the shoehorned in Superman fight. It makes you forget about the shoehorned in Lois Lane cameo and all those kind of things. Because you're like, okay, who the hell is doing this? Mm-hmm. Like, for the villain that I even got excited to see in Arkham City when he showed up.
I don't mind that I don't mind that there was a whodunit. I don't mind that at all. But to find out who it really was behind it was a little disappointing for me.
Yeah, it was a big letdown. Yeah.
I wasn't the only one that thought that. I thought I was going to offend people in here. I'm sorry.
Now, see, I'm of two minds. See, okay, my college days when I was very highbrow and wanted something more literate, and now I'm just having fun with this old 20-year-old story. I'm trying to blend it, and even still, it's like Jason Todd still would have been the better reveal. Even with everything.
And that's what I thought it would be too. I really thought that. And I don't know.
He has the intel, he has the skills, he has the connections.
Or if it was somebody like, maybe Joker's daughter, you could kind of see the Joker side of it. I was thinking it was going to be something like Joker's daughter, because it was about the same mindset as something Joker would do. And then you see Joker and he's a little bonkers in this, and you're like, okay, yeah, it's gotta be, because there's certain things in here that is screaming they're on Joker's side. And you're like wondering like which villain. And then you find out who it is, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not buying it. I'm sorry, but I'm not buying I don't know. I don't.
That's a person Batman should have suspected. Like, okay, I haven't seen Tommy in how many years, and he's popped up around the same time as this Hush character.
Yeah.
Check him out.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
I was totally dead. So that's like, oh, you're alive? I didn't even what?
Yeah, like, why are you're catching me off guard? Like now? Now?
And in the real world, like of DC, they actually said that, like, yeah, you know what, we were planning on having Jason Todd being the big villain, but we weren't sure how it was going to be received, so we kind of backpedaled it a little bit. And then once we realized that people were like, oh crap, Jason Todd, that's when they started writing Red Hood, because that's the kind of thing, because they kind of used it as a testing ground for Jason Todd at that point. I was actually talking to my fiance about it the other day, because he was on one of the Red Hood forums, and it was like, oh no, because apparently they joked around in the Teen Titans animated TV show that was on Cartoon Network, not Teen Titans Go, the original one, where they figured out who Red X was, and they put
Red
Jason
X,
Todd. And like, wait, did the Teen Titans TV show reveal Jason Todd being alive before the comic books did? And I'm like, no, he came back in Hush a year before that episode, so no, it was Hush that Jason Todd's first appearance was in. And even Jim Lee was like, yeah, no, when I got the script saying that Jason Todd showed up, I shit my pants.
Right.
And basically, everyone who was involved in the story said that the actual reveal of who the mastermind was a backdoor safe bet that we didn't want to risk it. We didn't want to hinge a story on someone that we could have tanked the entire thing. So we knew that this villain was capable of doing all this. So
I would have preferred Deadshot or Joker's daughter. I mean, how many times has DC or the writers been like, "Oh my God, it's safe. We can't go out of our safe space because readers or audience won't like it." Well, you know what? What if we did? Why is it so risky to go outside of the uncomfortable zone? I mean, come on. I mean, it's safe. I mean, this was not safe. Okay, this was not safe. This is what Callie Alex says. It was kind of a letdown of, okay, you had all these possibilities and then you find out who the villain is. It's like when I watched, I'm going to get off topic for 1 second. It's like when I watched Scream at 8 years old. Okay, the movie Scream. I knew that one of the characters was the villain. Okay, but I didn't expect Matthew Lillard to be the second one. Okay, so you had like an oh crap moment. This would have been good had it been like one villain, but you find out it's actually two people. Like it would have been like Joker's daughter and really it was Harley and they were working together, or Joker's daughter and Joker, or somebody that they were like switching on and off, or something of that nature. Not
that's what they did for this.
Not this ending.
Like in the revision.
You get that kind of revelation if you continue the chronological graphic novel thing with Red Hood Lost Days, because it goes into what Jason Todd felt after he first saw Batman at that point, and the sheer rage and betrayal he felt seeing Tim Drake there and all that kind of stuff. Because if you just read Hush, then you see like, oh, maybe it was like it was Clayface the entire time. That's why he didn't say
that could have been great too. But I mean, it could have been good.
Jason was like freaking, like you see in Red Hood Lost Days that once go read it, it's an amazing graphic novel. The Red Hood Lost Days that he's just like screaming in pure pain that everything that Talia told him about Batman was true, and that leads him to go into Under the Red Hood. That was the final straw. It's like, no, Bruce would never do that to me. Bruce, and then he goes and meets up with Hush and does that, and then he sees that everything Hush told him was true. He's like, well, nope, screw it, gauntlets down, I'm putting on the helmet, and we're going to freaking war. And so, like, it's something that if you were reading comics at the time, it did pay off eventually, but in the graphic novel, unfortunately, it kind of leaves it hanging.
Even when you're reading at the time and it does pay off eventually, it was like, oh, that's such a missed opportunity, and this feels like backpedaling and just adding on. And you had it, you should have did it.
That's the downside to, like, Batman, is because Batman being the highest seller of DC, they don't take as many risks with Batman as they do with other characters, because God forbid the numbers with Batman tank like they did a couple of years ago with Tom King. Unfortunately, they play it safe with their highest rollers. It's just the way it is. They need their numbers.
This is long after. I mean, they broke Batman's back and replaced him with Azrael. They killed Superman and returned with 4 other guys, and it was like they did that for years. I thought that was going to be a flash in the pan, and they did that for years. And I was like, yeah, okay, I like this. So they played it safe with this.
That was supposed to be permanent. They're like, no, we can't actually kill him, guys. Bring him back.
So, Rick, what's your opinion on this? I mean, do you think the ending was a letdown? Do you think that they could have gone with a different villain? What's your opinion on this? I mean, how do you feel about it?
So Hush as a character I liked, but what I didn't really care too much for was the beginning of the story. He's one way, and then by the end of it, he is like completely mental. So it's like, wait a minute, where was that mental fortitude that we were introduced to when he was hiding in the shadows at the end of the book? Like, I understand that the emotion got the better of him. Don't get me wrong. It happens to all of us, and they were trying to kind of basically, or at least the impression I got from Jeff Loeb's writing was that they were trying to maintain a level of humanity by having Tommy's anger get the better of him. So I get that, and that's what they do with Jason all the time. They do that all the time with him. But the way they went about it in introducing Hush one way and how the book ended was completely different. Yeah, and I do wish that their introduction of Hush. I wish they hadn't. I wish there were panels where they didn't show him. early on, like standing by the sign, or like his face with the newspaper. I would have liked that first introduction to him had been when Ivy met him and it was just his hand and he took it, like, and then just kind of keep it. And then kind of keep it on the down low. And then once he got to Metropolis or at the opera or whatever, then kind of sprinkle it in. I think with Tommy, see, here's the thing that kind of throws me a little bit. One, you have Bruce almost comatose, and he's doing SOS tapping, saying to get Tommy Elliott, of which Tommy Elliott's never been mentioned before.
Right.
Yeah.
Then Tommy shows up, and now all of a sudden he's in Bruce's life. It's like it should have been just way more low key.
Yeah.
And I think for me, what could have helped the story a bit would have been passage of time. You know, like Tommy comes in, and then it's like a month later, Bruce is healing, and then you see Tommy again, and then 3 months pass. So like all this takes place over a serious amount of time that the reader knows.
Yeah.
If you look at it from a real world aspect, this story would have been on a monthly release, so it would have kind of had that real world passage of time where you had issue 600, which would have been the first one, and you have to wait a month. And I think this one is like what, 8 to 10 issues. So this entire story would have been probably over the course of a whole year. So,
well, it was issue 608, I believe. I think it was issue 608 to 619.
Yeah.
So individually. Yeah.
So like you have that time, and that's the difference for our viewers reading a story like this. You have to kind of keep that in mind. Sometimes we have these big overarching storyline. You're reading it in graphic novel format, so you're getting all the information all at once. Whereas the story was designed to be read over the course of a year.
Yeah.
So it changes kind of the aspect of reading the story when you're like, you read one issue, you have to wait 3 weeks for the next issue, another 3 weeks for the next one. So it gives you more breathing room when you realize that this was supposed to be read over the course of pretty much a year.
Yeah, they do. Well, guys, thank you absolutely so much. Viewers, we want you to know that this was just part 1. We will be coming back with a part 2 of Hush. We're going to continue on. The story is just too deep, too lengthy. There's just so much meat on the bone that those of you that have seen me on Rogue's Gallery know that I like to call things like this the Florentine cut. And Batman Hush is a Florentine cut, no doubt. If you don't know what that is, Google it, and you'll be in for a nice surprise. Batman Hush is a Florentine cut, hands down. This first part, thank you for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. On behalf of everybody that has been viewing this, we want to hear from you guys. We really, really do. We look forward to exploring a bit more of this story in the part 2 coming up, and look for some things in the group chat. We're going to throw out a poll. We're going to have some extra videos coming your way, and we want to hear what you guys have to say about other books, other storylines, other things you want us to explore and talk about on the Court Live. Alex, New York Alex, any final words?
This is one of my favorite stories. It's definitely a lot to take in. I definitely recommend everyone go to their local comic book shop and pick up a copy. It's always on every single top 10 best Batman stories of all time. And yeah, I can't wait to talk about it again the next 2 weeks.
Yep, absolutely. Callie, Alex, any final words?
Yes, I'm enjoying this book a lot more than I remember. So this is another example of if you didn't like something back in the day, revisit it. Try it with new eyes. It might change your opinion.
Absolutely. And Ashley, your final thoughts?
It was better than the movie. But then again, so was The Shining. So
Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park book was way better than the movie, although to see the dinosaurs on film was awesome. I gotta admit.
So I mean, there's good things I liked about the book. There's, I can't complain too much. I just wish it was better developed, I guess to say. But we'll talk about that more next time, and I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And just a note to the viewers, please do not misinterpret us kind of nitpicking and making it sound as if we're beating this book up and then we're saying how awesome it is. This really is a good story. This really is a fantastic book of artwork. There's just, as fans, there are some things that we would have better appreciated in certain aspects of the storytelling. That's all it is. We're not saying go get this while we're trashing it. We're not.
No.
We're not doing that at all.
Gray is fine. We can love something, but also recognize the faults.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and that's the great thing about
that's
take what you like about it. You can leave what you don't like about it.
Yep. And I would consider that a true fan. I mean, not everything is going to be wonderful. Rainbows and butterflies. I mean, not every Batman movie obviously is great. Just like not every Danny Elfman soundtrack is perfect.
Yep.
So not every comic book is well developed, but this one it's good. Go check it out if you haven't, and we'll talk about it more next time.
Absolutely. Well, as always, guys, we definitely appreciate it. You guys take care. Wish you all the best, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Court Live Batman Hush Part 2.
Woo!
Bye.